Hello and welcome to Tabletop Oddity. My name is Jay and today I'm going to be looking at it seems weird so early on in the game to talk about meta and stuff like that, but for Star Wars Legion we have had two events which have been sort of published online, so we can see the list and we can see who like won and lost kind of thing, which does allow us to sort of see if we can find any trends in the metagame basically. And those two events that I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about the Invader League, which was the tabletop simulator version of the game ran basically by the Star Wars Legion Discord, which you should definitely check out if you're not already on. And the other one was the UK Games Expo, Hammer Gaming. They ran a Star Wars Legion tournament and they've published most of the lists and who won and lost kind of thing. So we're going to be looking at like the top 4 in the Invader League and maybe the top 5 minus 3rd position in the Glasshammer UK Game Expo list, because we don't have that for whatever reason. That's just not been published. So we're going to be talking about the meta. I realise it's very early and we're not necessarily going to go through every list, and I'll explain why. So the winner of the UK Game Expo Glasshammer event was Ellis from Star Wars Legion Command, who has a YouTube channel and like a podcast and stuff like that. You should definitely check him out. He came first. I'm not 100%. I think Nikki came second. Then I think third was Antonio, and Don Lee was 5th. So let's have a look at Ellis's list. Luke and Leia, that's going to become quite a staple of all of the lists that we have available to us right now. You're going to see that quite a lot. Luke and Leia, and then it's basically 6 units of troopers, 2 ATRTs. Now, he's rocking the Z6 trooper. We're sort of going to see a theme of people taking what most people consider the best weapon. There are a few sporadic people who have used different weapons and stuff like that, but basically the best weapon gets spammed basically, and in this case it is probably the Z6 trooper. Luke's rocking force push and environmental gear and force reflexes, pretty standard. Leia not rocking anything. The ATRTs, now I always think like the blaster rifle one with the 5 black dice is almost as good as the laser cannon, but in Ellis's list here specifically, he doesn't have anything else apart from Luke and Leia maybe to hurt, well not even Leia, but mainly Luke, against vehicles. So it makes sense that he's gone with the laser cannon there. For his command cards, he's literally just picked all the ones that he could do with the both commanders. Fair enough. Rebels, it's basically Luke, Leia, trooper spam, ATRT. Makes sense. And then if we have a look at Nikki, now there is a slight trend towards the Rebels winning in this, but I don't necessarily think we're at a point where we can say Rebels are better or anything like that. Nick's running General Vias, 6 units of troopers, 3 units of speeder bikes. Very sort of symmetrical in that sense. He's rocking the DLT-19, which most people would say is the better of the 2 weapons. So it's sort of like the same. Oh, just absolutely almost KO'd the mic there. It's sort of like the same theme, like the same idea of a list. It's a cheap commander, lots of troops, some sort of maneuverable or cheap vehicle, I guess. So that was Nikki's list. He came second. Ellis was first. I think 4th. I think Antonio. Very similar to the previous list, like just rocking some snowtroopers instead of some stormtroopers, and I think 1 less unit of troopers because he's gone with the long range comlink, whereas Nikki didn't have anything. Again, you can see that archetype, can't you? Cheap commanders, troops, speeder bikes. Now we don't have the 3rd position. Antonio I think was 4th. Don Lee is sort of the only one I can see that was separate. He didn't have, he had both commanders, he had slightly less troopers, and he had the air speeder, which a lot of people don't necessarily really like so much, but obviously Don Lee coming in 5th. I think out of about, I'm not 100% sure, I think it might have been 32, could be 16, not 100% sure. So that's the UK Game Expo list, and you can see pretty sort of similar. A bit of diversity there, as in we have the we've got a few stormtroopers and we've got a few Imperial lists, and we've got a few Rebel lists. However, when we look at the Invader League, which is the tabletop simulator lists, and this will explain why I'm in the middle rather than on the side. Well, let's have a look at the first one. Now, these guys are all currently in the semi-final, as in there's only both semi-finals to go and then a final. I don't currently have the names, but I know Ellis is in it, Riggins, Spiritfire, and I'm missing somebody's name who I can't remember, so I do apologise. This obviously is a tournament that's been run online. Maybe you don't think that it's a good enough way to run a tournament. I personally think it more than superbly is. It's more than, like, it's the same game. It's interesting that Ellis is doing well in both. But yeah, let's look at the list. As you should be able to see on my left, whatever that is to you guys, I'm not 100% sure. We got Luke and Leia. We got Fleet Troopers, Rebel Troopers, Rebel Troopers, Rebel Troopers, Rebel Troopers, AT-ATs. Then I'm not 100% sure they would be naked. I mean, presumably they would be because of the points. I personally would not have liked to run naked AT-ATs, but it's obviously doing this person very well. So very similar to Ellis's list in a sense from the UK Game Expo tournament from Glasshammer. The next list, it's Luke and Leia, Rebel Trooper, Z6, 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 Laser Cannon. I'm fairly sure that this is Ellis's list because it's pretty much the same as the last like he ran at UK Game Expo. I mean that's a very similar list to the previous one. Let's try the third list. Oh, Luke and Leia. That's interesting. Z6 Trooper spam. And then some laser cannons. I mean, I think that might be Ellis's, and I think the other one is somebody else's. And then the fourth list, it's Luke and Leia with the Rebel. It's saying I don't have them because I don't have this many for all the windows that are open. And then some AT-ATs with some flamethrowers. I mean, for the Invader League, I've definitely seen a strong trend. So, I mean, I don't think we really need to talk about the lists anymore. You've sort of seen them. If you want to have a look at them in detail, I'll try and post the links to the Glasshammer page and the Invader League. Everything's available there. If you've got any tournaments that there's like enough information for me to have a look at them, then please do let me know. But for now, let's talk about those lists. It's interesting to me. Let's have a look what's mainly been ditched. The AT-ST is a big. There's no Imperials with rocking the AT-ST. I still like the AT-ST, but it's obviously when you look at the objectives and stuff like that, in this small section of the meta, it's obviously not performing enough for people to think it's worth taking. Whether or not that'll always be the case once other units come out and stuff like that, but the trooper spam at the minute is obviously very real. Now, I talked about cheap commanders for the Imperials because if you rocked Vias and Vader, that's a lot of points, yeah, and you're losing out on your speeder bikes and stuff like that. Whereas Luke and Leia sort of is strong enough to carry her own weight. You get her command cards, she does 3 black dice, she's like almost worth the points just for her own sake, plus then she's an extra commander if Luke fails. So Leia replaces the Airspeeder, and that's obviously like what most people are rocking. There is Don who was rocking both Luke, Leia and the Airspeeder, but that seems to be an exception rather than sort of the trend. Trooper spam, it's everywhere, isn't it? I don't think, going back to the Airspeeder very briefly, I think I can see why the Airspeeder's not ran as much as the AT-ST, or basically why it's not been ran here. It's very difficult to fly, and it's not got that many wounds, and it ends up being quite easily to kill, especially if you're rocking against somebody like the Imperials, who all have the DLT with Impact 1. So, and even the speeder bikes are quite good at whittling down the Airspeeder, so I can understand the Airspeeder. The AT-ST, it's just a lot of points for what it does. Like, you can get basically 3 units of troopers for a decked out AT, for like decked out 3 units of troopers for an AT-ST, and the troopers can hold objectives, you know, have they count more if you've got the one where you need to get across the board. Trooper spam at the minute sort of just seems to make more sense, and it's also interesting that the weapon choice is pretty much it's what everybody thought would be the best ones. We've got the DLT for the Imperials. I know we only have 2 lists there, so we actually don't have that much to like really go off, but we got 2. We got the DLTs, and for the Rebels we got the Z6 Troopers. That's pretty much the ones that we all thought would be good. We've seen a couple of Fleet Troopers with Flamethrower, but they're not as common as the Z6 Trooper. And yeah, the ATRTs, a lot of people, I mean, nobody's rocking my weapon of choice, which I can't show you because I'm on full screen. I'm not a very smart man. Nobody's rocking the blaster rifle with 5 black dice. People are either rocking the flamethrower to get up close and personal, or they're rocking the laser cannon, possibly because they need a way of dealing with vehicles against an ATST if it does end up being on the field. It's sort of amusing that like so early on, it seems that I won't say I'm confident, but it definitely seems that even this early on, we're seeing a trend of commanders, either Vias or Luke and Leia. That seems to be a potent combination, especially the fact you can use Leia and then activate Luke in the same turn. Ooh, sweet. Like, yeah, the meta is sort of already forming, and it'll be very interesting. The Rebel commandos and the Scout commanders probably aren't going to mix this up too much. It's still going to be trooper spam, basically. Whether or not it's special troopers or normal troopers won't really matter. It's still infantry on the board. Whether or not they then, their special abilities really put off certain like ATRTs or something, we'll have to wait and see. We don't necessarily know all the mines and all that kind of stuff. But at the minute, if you want to be competitive, it's sort of take your commanders. Probably not Darth Vader because he's a bit slow and a bit difficult to rock and expensive. Spam the troopers, pick the best weapon, and then pick either speeder bikes or ATRT depending on what faction you are. So, I mean, it's early to start talking about meta. Whether or not we'll go through, when we have more lists available and bigger tournaments, I'll probably do proper meta analysis. But at the minute, I'm very cognizant that the pool of the sample size is just possibly not big enough. These are just 2 tournaments that, you know, they've not had 200 people in or anything. They're sort of like 16, 32 people. I think the Invader League had quite a few people. Not sure how many. But again, we're seeing a trend. Let me know your thoughts. Have you come across these sort of cookie cutter builds where it's troopers with the best weapon? And have you maybe thought of a counter to that? I'm going to an event in a couple of weeks. Do I want to be the trooper spam guy, or do I want to rock the ATST just because it's cool? We'll have to wait and see. Other than that, I do hope you have a most beautiful day. As always, if you like this kind of video, do like and let me know. If you don't like the video, I don't mind you clicking the dislike, but I would prefer if you tell me why. That's the most useful way of getting something we can all agree going forward. This is the first one where I've ever even looked at other people's lists, so bear with me. I'll try and improve this and we'll get to a nice level. As I said, like, share, subscribe, have a beautiful day, and goodbye. Bye, guys.